Hey friends, it's me, the Ebony Otaku, the well-rounded nerd. Today we're going to take a look at one of my all-time favorite anime. It has that 90s childhood nostalgia for me, and it's also a reboot done very, very well. We are talking about the mesmerizing, the beautiful, and slightly terrifying Fruits Basket. So, two things before we start. One, spoiler warning. I cannot talk about this show without talking about all the things. And number two, trigger warning as well, because this is basically childhood trauma, the show. Okay, you can't say that I didn't warn you, so here we go. Fruits Basket is the story of our young protagonist, Honda Toru. Toru is a young girl. She's about 15 years old at the start of the story, and she is living alone in the woods. Yes, I know it starts out a little weird, but it makes sense later on. The reason she's living alone in the woods, in a tent, by the way, she has some kind of shelter, is because both of her parents have passed away. Her father died when she was younger, and her mother recently passed away as well. So she is now left all alone. She does have a few living relatives, her grandfather, and then she's got an aunt and uncle and a couple of cousins who are alive. Her grandfather adores her, but he's getting older and his house can't quite hold so many people, and she feels guilty for being a burden to her grandfather. And, with renovations happening on his house so other family members can come live in, she feels like there's no space for her. There's just no place in his home. And she really is that kind of character that has a heart so big you can't believe a person like this exists. So she makes the decision, you know what, I'm going to go live on my own. She just doesn't tell anyone that on her own meant a tent in the woods. While living in this tent in the woods, it is stumbled upon one day by a young man named Soma Yuki. She doesn't know this, but she has planted her tent on the property of a very large and powerful family. She just thinks it's open woodland space. Now, Yuki knows that she's basically trespassing on family property, but he feels sorry for her and mum's the word. He's not going to say anything. She happens to go to school with this kid as well. And at school, he's kind of like the prince of the school. He's the best looking boy. He has martial prowess. He's polite to everybody. He is just the most popular thing walking. Also at school are Toru's two best friends, Uotani and Hana. These two young ladies have known Toru since she was a young girl, and her mother, Toru's mother, had an impact on their lives. So they feel very protective of her. But Toru being Toru, she doesn't want to burden her friends with her life circumstances either. So she doesn't tell them she's living in a tent in the woods on basically trespassed property. But she doesn't know she's trespassing. Well, there's a little group of Somas living on this wooded property. The oldest being Shigure. Shigure is he's a writer and he's a little bit lecherous. Let's be real. It's anime. This anime isn't dirty by any accounts, but there's always got to be that character in anime, and he's that character. And he's living with Yuki on Soma property. They've got their own house, and they're just away from the rest of the family for their own peace of mind. Because if you've ever been a part of an extremely large family, getting place and space to yourself can be a little difficult. So they know that Honda's out there, and they're like, well, okay, she's not hurting anything. We'll let her stay. Well, one day there is a landslide on the property, and it destroys Honda's little tent. And Yuki helps her dig her belongings out of the landslided property. And Shigure allows Honda to stay in their home. And this is where it really gets interesting, because allowing Honda to stay in their home, one, the propriety of it all. It's a, 15-year-old girl living with two dudes, the looks of it all. Secondly, the family has a secret. There's a reason this family has a ton of property and they kind of live away from the rest of society. And And Shigeru decides, well, as long as we're careful, it'll be okay. She's adorable. I'm weird. Let's let her stay. Now, Honda being Honda, she can't just stay in someone's home without contributing to the home. So she takes up the mantle of doing the chores, washing the dishes, hanging the laundry, cleaning the floors, doing the cooking. It's great. And the guys are like, you know what? It's great there's a woman here, because when she first comes to the house, it looks like two guys have been living alone. So she completely domesticates the house and makes it livable. They're loving having someone there who's doing the things that they just don't know how to do because, guys, don't at me in the comments. It's the context of the show. Well, in the middle of doing her chores, Honda accidentally stumbles upon the secret of the family. She trips and bangs in to them. And when she bangs into them, they transform. Shigeru turns into a dog. Yuki turns into a mouse. And then they're joined by another character with red hair and a bad attitude, my personal favorite in the whole series, Kyon-kun. Kyo is just, a hot-tempered teenager with all the angst and all the problems. And she bumps into him too. He turns into a cat. And thus begins our story. Honda has found out the Soma family secret accidentally, but she's found it out. The Somas are under a curse of the zodiac, or Jionishi, if you were to say it in Japanese. The Jionishi zodiac are the animals that make up the zodiac, and this family is cursed with those animal spirits. If they are embraced or run into or super excited or maybe sick and weakened, they turn into their zodiac animal. And Honda discovers this. And she doesn't freak out in the, oh my God, you turned into an animal, but she thinks something's wrong and she wants to get them help. That's how just sweet and kind she is. And finally, the men transform back into their normal selves. And oh, by the way, when they come back, they were animals, they shrunk, so, they got nothing on. So they've learned how to redress themselves in 4 seconds flat. So super embarrassing for her because she's just a proper delicate young lady. And they explain the situation to her. But now they have a decision to make. Because in the past, when someone has discovered the family secret, the policy of the Somas is wipe their memory. They never saw it, ain't been a part of it, just wipe their memory, send them elsewhere, protect us, because the family sanctity is what's most important overall. Now, the head of the Soma family is a very secretive character named Akio. Akio is weird. If you heard that, that was my dog yawning in the middle of my video. Akio's a bit weird. Akio keeps a tight fist over the family as the family head, especially those under the zodiac curse. And for Honda to be allowed to live in Shigeru's house on family property, Akio has to say yes. Well, for some reason, Akio thinks Honda is entertaining and wants to see what happens because apparently there's a bit of change that has happened in these three young men living with Honda. So let's see where it goes, basically, because Akio is always looking for depraved entertainment for some reason. We're going to get into that. And is looking at Honda as just another form of entertainment until her job is done and then she'll be cast aside. So this is where our story really gets going as Honda navigates getting to know each member of the zodiac in the Soma family and also balancing her school work, her friendships with Uo and Hana, and then also she has a part-time job to pay for her own school fees. And then she's taking care of this whole household. So this is a busy young woman. She has all the responsibility put on her because she doesn't want the guilt or responsibility of being beholden to people taking care of her. But conversely, she is still being taken care of because emotionally she needs people to lean on. And then this family is providing her with a place to live even though she's kind of a bit of an indentured servant in exchange. I can't go into every last detail of the story because we'd be here all day. But there are two anime iterations of the story. The first came out back in the 90s, or was it the early 2000s? I can't remember. I was young when it came out. And I think I watched that original airing. It was 24, 26 episodes. I probably watched it 15 times. I absolutely loved it. But what was disappointing is they didn't continue the story. If you've read the manga, it ticks you off even more because you know there's so much more to the Soma story and the Honda story than what they put into the anime. That's one of the frustrating things about being part of anime fandom or in the otaku world. The best shows that have the most grounded characters, the most relatable settings, those are the ones that don't get picked up for extra seasons. But the more ridiculous a show is, where your suspension of disbelief doesn't even come into question because whatevs, or it's just the story is blah, the characters are blah, those seem to get 300 episodes. Anime, what you gonna? Well, 2 years ago, Fruits Basket got a reboot. And a lot of folks are scared of rebooting. I'm not, because I love seeing properties that I've enjoyed be reimagined for a new generation because that helps the stories live on. Everything I grew up with doesn't have to be what it was when I grew up with it. I love seeing younger kids get into the things that I was into. So what if it's updated for the generation? The stories I love are honestly just updates of older stories for my generation and so on. Literally, there's nothing new under the sun. What sucks about some reboots is they don't have anything new to add to the story. They literally just rehash the exact same story, maybe update the animation or the art style a little bit, change directors, but nothing new happened. Nothing worth redoing this whole story took place to justify it. Another reboot that gets a little bit of controversy is the Sailor Moon reboot. We've got the 90s Sailor Moon and now we've got Sailor Moon Crystal. I love them both. Why? And I'm going to talk about them both eventually. But I love them both. I grew up with Sailor Moon, watched all 200 episodes of the original anime, but I also read the entire manga. And even as a kid, I was like, I feel like the manga told a better story because don't at me, you're going to at me, it's fine. But in the 90s anime, the reason it had 200 episodes is because the filler of it all. Who could do a filler episode on par with Dragon Ball Z was some Sailor Moon. And if you've watched it, you know what I'm talking about. What they did in that reboot of Sailor Moon was they condensed it down to be more in line with the manga, not beat for beat, but very close. And the art style was closer to the manga as well. And as someone who loves the manga more than the anime, to me, Crystal is awesome. There are some points in the animation, it's like, ooh, y'all outsourced that frame, didn't you? But other than that, so reboots are not necessarily bad. They just are, and we work with them. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're terrible, but I love seeing the perpetuation of a good story. So back to Honda and all these animal peoples, now that I went on that tangent, that she's allowed to live with them, which is awesome for her, but she's going to go through this process of getting to know all the members of this family, learning who the other members of the zodiac are, what their animals are, and then what drives them. As she gets to know Yuki and Kyo, who are in the house with her, and they go to school with her, she learns the most about them. She discovers that even though at school, Yuki is this princely character that everyone looks up to, admires, and all the girls have a crush on him, he's very insecure. He's got hidden trauma in his past. He has outbursts once in a while that are scarier than if a person was always out of control, because when he burst out, someone's really going to get hurt. But it only lasts for that long because he's learned to repress his feelings. It's the quiet ones you got to watch, because when they do go off, it's extra bad. And then there's Kyo, who wears his feelings on his sleeve. Kyo is the spirit of the cat. And if you've read the story of the Jionishi, God holds a party for all of the zodiac, animals, and all of the animals are, heading to the party. And the rat character, which is Yuki, the rat tells the cat, hey, the party's actually tomorrow, so you can take a nap and, we'll see you tomorrow. The cat sleeps through the entire party, and the mouse hops on the back of the ox, and the ox is actually first to God's door, but the mouse jumps off of the ox's head and runs in first. So the rat is considered the most lucky, most clever of the Jiunishi because it devised this plan. And then the cat got left out because it slept through the party. And what's unfortunate is that story carries through the Soma family. Yuki, amongst the family, is seen as the most blessed child. His mother doesn't see him as her child. She sees him as this prize that she's won. I had the rat baby. And because I had the rat baby, I get all the special circumstances in life. And not only did she have the rat baby, but she had a second Jiunishi child, which is his brother, who is a whole other set of circumstances. His name is Ayame, and he's possessed by the spirit of the snake. And they could not be more opposite. Yuki is introverted and recluse, and once in a while he lets his true feelings out, and when they do come out, it's gonna be something. And Ayame, he's extra. He is extra. Have you ever seen Brad Mondo, the guy that does all the hair? He does a lot of the hair. He does the hairdresser reacts. One of my favorite YouTube channels. I can watch him all day. It's like if Brad Mondo was an anime character. That's the best I can describe him. And he's one of the more hilarious characters. But he's also part of Yuki's childhood trauma, because we discover that as Yuki was growing up, he was basically given to Akio as a gift. Make of that what you will. So his childhood was spent in isolation, but his mother is like, well, I'm living my best life because you are over here chilling with Akio. So whatevs. Don't care. Mom basically abandoned him, and Yuki reaches up and out to his older brother for help when he's a child, and he's literally being abused by Akio, and Ayame rejects him in his time of need. You've got these young men, one who is repressed and reclusive, and the other who wears his feelings on his sleeve. They're living in the same house. You've got Shigura in the middle of them, who finds it entertaining as they fight one another, because Kyo has it in his head that if he can best Yuki in a fight, he's got to magically be accepted into the Jiunishi. That's just not true, but it's all he's got to hold on to, because his whole family has rejected him for his entire life, and he has been treated like an outcast and a pariah. And then you've got Honda, who was thrown into this situation and doesn't judge any of them. She's a peacemaker. She doesn't fit into her own family, and this group of oddballs with a lot of secrets have accepted her. So she doesn't question who they are, but through her kindness, her warmth, Kyo and Yuki start to open up and realize that the entire world is not against them, that everything isn't scary, and there are people out there worth forging relationships with. Yuki thinks he has a crush on Honda, but what it really is he kind of sees her like the mother he never had, because she's taking care of him. She cares about his feelings. She checks on him. If he falls ill, she makes sure that he has what he needs. She's always fixing foods that he wants to eat. And that's new to him because his mother never did that for him. And then you've got Kyo, who's just the most, and he actually does have a crush on Honda, but he can't admit it to himself until one day Honda tells him, I've always wanted to meet the cat from the Zodiac because the cat is my favorite character. And he's like, you're ridiculous. You know nothing about the cat. And he tells her this because he knows he's a monster. The only thing that keeps him from not being that monster is a bracelet of beads around his wrist. Well, they have their adventures. It's a slice of life anime, and I love a good slice of life anime. Honda's going to school. She's interacting with her friends. They're suspicious of her living with these guys, but they accept it because she's not living on the street. Because she can't go live with them because Uo is like a whole hoodlum. So she's got nowhere for her to stay anyway because she lives with her deadbeat alcoholic father. And then there's no room at Hana's house because they have a whole family and no extra rooms. So they couldn't have taken Honda in even if they had wanted to. So they have a level of gratefulness to the Soma family, but they're still uber suspicious because you're a bunch of dudes living with our friend. And if you put one toe out of line, we're going to get you. In the first season, things come to a head. It's a rainy night, a stormy night. These kids have spent all this time getting to know one another. And one evening, Kyo and Yuki's Shisho shows up to the house. And he tells Kyo specifically, if you want to move forward, you have to let Honda see who you really are, basically, which is the monster side of him. And he's like, what, are you crazy? If she sees that part of me, she's going to outright reject me. Well, Shisho, trying to, be all altruistic and stuff, rips off his protective charm bracelet, and he transforms into the monstrous side of himself. And Honda sees this happen. And in the moment, it freaks her out. She's like, what, what is that? And it's not even that his body just transforms into this thing. There's a stench that comes with him. His voice changes. Like everything about him is wrong. He looks like a demon. And in his demon monster state, he sees the fear in Honda's eyes and he takes off running in the night, in the rain, into the woods. And she's paralyzed with fear for a moment, but then her kind heart takes over and she chases after him into the woods. And she's chasing after him because she knows in that moment he is his most alone. She has now seen into his complete self. And that's how relationships evolve. You don't know the state of a relationship with a person until you completely see into who they are. That's what intimacy means. See into me, who I really am. Can you handle me at my best? And can you handle me at my worst? And if you are to see me at my worst, are you going to judge me and abandon me? Or are you going to run after me? And Honda runs after Kyo. She runs after him and he tries to reject her. He rejects her to the point that he bats her away and injures her, but she doesn't care. And in the rain, in the woods, seeing him in this pitiful situation, she just hugs him. And she tells him that no matter what, she's always going to be there for him and that she's not scared of him. And that kindness is enough for him to calm down and transform back into the cat. And the next thing we see is Honda cradling this cat and coming back to the house on a sunny morning. Akio hears about all this and is like, oh, so she can tame the beast? Well, she's really weird if she's all about this monster. And Akio has to get a look at this Honda girl up close and personal. Well, Akio comes by the school one day and looks at Honda and is basically like, aren't you plain and cheap? Pfft, whatevs. And insults her to her face. And Yuki and Kyo are like, what are you doing? That wasn't cool. She's like, the best thing to ever happen to us. But this is a turning point in the story where Akio's attention turns to Honda, and this is very dangerous for her because we learned throughout the story that Akio is very selfish about the Junichi characters. To Akio, the Junichi are children. They're more than family. And especially the males in the Junichi, very protective of them, very selfish of them, almost in a way that a lover would be protective over whoever their significant other was, but to the extreme. And now Honda's gone from being an oddity in the family and something entertaining to potentially something dangerous, because Akio has spent years torturing these kids into submission to Akio's will, and now they're starting to get personalities of their own, and that simply cannot be. However, if he was to rip Honda out of their lives right now, as Akio has the power to, being the family head, well, they might revolt against Akio because they like this girl. So decides to let it play out and see what's going to happen. But Honda now has a target on her head from a very powerful character. So now we get to see more of what has happened in the past to different characters. She's introduced at one point to one of the younger members, well, a couple of years younger than herself, of the Junichi, named Momiji. Momiji is possessed by the spirit of the rabbit. And like a rabbit, he's absolutely adorable, like so adorable he looks like a girl almost, but just absolutely precious. But when he was born, his mother completely rejected him, which can happen a lot after birth. Typically, if the women give birth to a male Zodiac member, they can't embrace that child. They can't breastfeed them. They can't rock them to sleep. And one of two things will happen. They'll completely reject the child or become completely overprotective. And in Momiji's case, his mother rejected him. So he's raised basically by his father, and the mother's memory of Momiji is completely wiped. His mother and father go on to have another child, which is his little sister, who is his spitting image and just as adorable. But he's not allowed to interact with her. And that's his eternal torture, not being able to be in his sister's life as a big brother. And then we encounter other characters in the Junichi. We meet Hattori. Hattori is possessed by the spirit of the dragon, which manifests as a seahorse. It's adorable, even though he's the dragon. But he, like Yuki, is a very reserved, calm character. And we see in Hattori's past that he once fell in love and had a woman that he was set to marry. He's also the family doctor, so he takes care of everyone. His top responsibility is taking care of Akio. And Akio ain't happy with that because, like we said, Akio is very jealous of the members of the Zodiac and wants them all only in the attendance of Akio. So makes them break up. And Hattori's fiance is scarred by the experience, scarred to the point that he has to erase her memory. It is Hattori's responsibility in the family that if someone discovers the secret, he's the one who erases the memory. He had to erase him out of the memory of his own fiance. Hashtag trauma. And it keeps going on and on and on like this. And then you're introduced to the female members of the Zodiac. And Akio, even though there is a selfishness in that relationship, treats the women like dogs. Like one of them, he literally pushes out of a 3-story window and tries to kill her, and she ends up in the hospital for like a year from the injuries. Akio is messed up. And in the second season, we find out even more because that's where the first iteration of the series failed. It stopped at the first season and then didn't continue. Well, now we're going to get in deeper to what Akio is. You get to meet Akio in the original anime, but you don't really learn like what this whole connection between Akio and the Zodiac is. Now we're really exploring that in the second season of the reboot. And Akio, it turns out, is in the position of God to the Junichi. So the brunt of the curse is on this one individual, and that's what makes them the head of the family. And because of that, all of their emotions are just whoever that person happens to be at a given point in time. Akio crazy. Akio is crazy. That's the only way to say it. Since childhood, Akio has literally tortured, kept in boxes, starved members of the family that he took favor to, has demeaned them in public, humiliating ways, has chipped away at their self-esteem for Akio's own entertainment. Akio is messed up, and Akio's trauma translates into Akio traumatizing everyone else in the family. And then someone comes along, Honda, who, even though Honda has trauma, she rises above it. She chooses to still see the best in the world and the best in people. Even in Akio, she wants to embrace Akio and see Akio as a friend, even though Akio's rejecting her. She still wants to see, hey, what's hurt you? How can I help you? How can my heart reach out to your heart? They are polar opposites. And all of these Zodiac members have been under this torture for their entire lives. And there's the power of this series. Childhood is so important. It's sacred. And what we do with and to and for children in those formidable years shapes who they are for the rest of their lives. And unless there is an intervening source to prompt change in them, whatever happened to them in those first 5, 6, 10 years is going to carry over into adulthood. And that damaged, traumatized child turns into a traumatized adult who goes out traumatizing more people. It's like stairs. They go up, they go down, but they're always going in the same direction. And that is what's happened with all of these Zodiac members. Akio is tortured by the curse. And because Akio is tortured, that means everybody else has to be tortured. Physically, mentally, spiritually, doesn't care. You're all going to suffer because I'm suffering. And then there's Honda. He says, yes, I'm suffering, but that doesn't give me a right to make other people suffer. I'm going to see what good I can do in the world, because doing good brings me joy, genuine joy. I hurt when you hurt. I'm sad when you're sad. I'm sick when you're sick. I want the best for you. I want to see you rise above and conquer your demons and live your best life. And Akio's not having it. Honda's a threat, because Honda is going to take from Akio everything Akio created. This little world of torture and trauma is what Akio likes. He doesn't care about these people's feelings. But Honda takes it upon herself to now figure out what the curse is and how to break it. And that's how the second season leaves off. She's beginning her investigation into the curse, and is there a way to lift the curse? And that puts Honda and Akio directly at odds with each other, because they want different things. She wants them free. Akio wants them bound. And in the very last scene of the second season, we discover that Akio is a girl. And that completely blows the lid off of the entire dynamic. I am looking forward to the third season. I can't wait for it to come out. I'm one of those people that doesn't do week-to-week shows, not into it. I will let the whole thing roll through, and then I will binge it in a weekend. Netflix has spoiled me. Like, I'm one of those people that has to be able to watch their whole show at once, or I'm not watching it at all. So that's just the world we're in now, and I have no shame in it. I hoped you enjoyed this deep dive into Fruits Basket. It is one of my all-time favorites. And even the title Fruits Basket has depth to it. There's a game in Japan that small children can play. It's kind of like Odd Man Out, but Fruits Basket, where all the children are assigned a fruit, and they run around and kind of play a game of tag. And in the midst of that, there is one who's called the rice ball. The rice ball is the odd man out in the game. And until somebody yells, onigiri, rice ball, the rice ball can't join in the kids running around. And that's who Honda is. She's the rice ball. She's the odd one out. There's all these players around her living their lives, trying to discover themselves, but she doesn't fit in with any of them. She doesn't fit in with her own family. She doesn't fit in with the Somas. She barely fits in at school, except with her couple of friends. But she still wants to be included. She's the rice ball sitting there waiting on someone to call on her. And Yuki and Kyo and Shigure, they called on her. They said, onigiri. And now she's part of the game. And because they included her, she is beholden to them. She wants to solve their crisis. She wants things to be better for them. I hope you will go watch the 90s anime, watch the reboot, read the manga. It's all wonderful. Who loves a good story is me. So I'm getting better at this, but I still haven't figured out my whole outro. But I do hope that you will like, comment, and subscribe, and we can talk about Fruits Basket down in the comments.